Hi everyone, it's Alex, and today I'm here to do some general thoughts and also some shout outs about being on Booktube for 2 years. And so starting off really with like my perception of books now since being on the creating content side of Booktube, I initially always assumed before really consuming myself in the reading culture that whenever I walked into a bookstore that I had assumed that every book in a bookstore was automatically good because it was published, which usually always led me to think about whenever I initially started reading as much as I do now, a little bit before I started making my own videos on Booktube. I always was approaching what I thought about a book based on what I liked about it instead of what I really thought about it, maybe about how it affected me or how I thought it had its own relationship with the world and what it was trying to say about the world. So I definitely think by reading, or at least whenever I walk into a bookstore, I feel powerful or more liberated because of Booktube and making videos. I feel like I can feel comfortable in a bookstore recognizing the majority of books in there, especially usually right when you walk in the entrance and you see all the recently released or prize worthy or popular ones or whatever. Now I totally get it. I totally get why for people that don't read as much as we might do here on Booktube, whether a viewer or a creator, that walking in a bookstore can be really daunting. I specifically remember that one of the first things I hated about doing Booktube was trying to figure out what books to read because I really didn't know a lot about books or as much as I do now. And I specifically remember walking into a bookstore and just limiting myself to maybe 3 or 4 books to buy, and it was very painful because I had no idea about what types of books I liked. I guess now technically literary fiction is what I would go for, and I know usually what writers are within that frame, or now thinking of creative nonfiction, which I also like very much. Yeah, just being more on the radar of books in general is something I think is so valuable about Booktube in general. Another thing is that initially I would always really tell myself to read one book at a time, but now I find it totally helpful to read more than one book at one time. I actually find doing so improves my reading a lot and it helps me retain a lot more because I think by having a handful of books to think about or to be flipping back and forth from, it makes me more selective about what I feel in the mood for and what specifically I remember about where I left off in that book that propels me to want to continue reading. So now moving on to sort of the content side or making content on Booktube, I always see Booktube effective as this measure of being propelled by specific thoughts or streamlined into thematic or succinct content. And I only mean that as a form of with the internet in general. I think the internet encourages low attention spans. So I think with videos video essays, maybe on movies or TV shows. There's one channel, I think it's called Screen Prism now, or maybe The Take. I think they changed their names. But with videos like that, I think people genuinely like to learn through mediums, whether or not it's something awful happening on Twitter or watching a video essay and learning about the relationship between visuals and writing and things like that. I think Booktube is very much the same way. Although Booktube I think is more interesting because it's so reliant on the person or the content creator. Books don't have that visual component where we can show examples with film. So it's up to us to really articulate those visions or how doing something as wholesome as talking about books on the internet this way makes people feel driven to really want to communicate with other people, which in terms of community is something I am much more appreciative of since starting making videos on Booktube. So naturally that would mean for my own content, after what I all just said, is that I prefer my content specifically to be very succinct or organized, at least, as you guys can probably tell with how I sort of script bullet point style my review videos, which I love making. Reviews and wrap-ups are my favorite videos to make. and I really always look forward to them. And I think for myself, by holding that uniformity and consistency on my part with how I deliver or talk about books, I think it's totally okay. And I've been feeling better about this over time since being on Booktube, that I see Booktube, or especially my channel, as this very curated space or a repository of information. So initially I always felt bad about this, but I am totally okay with doing things like going back and realizing that old videos I've made don't feel like me or representative of me anymore, so I go and delete them. In my eyes, I just see that if someone were to come to my channel and see I have so many videos, however like that quantifies or whoever considers a lot of videos, I would want them to find them as accessible as possible, whether or not looking at my playlist. But yeah, I just want people to feel like what I'm putting out there is my best content, whatever that means. And again, with making content, I see this pop up a lot in Booktube newbie tags. Not that I'm like any, you know, person for wisdom or anything, but my advice would be is that whenever I see that question about what advice would you want from booktubers that have sort of been in this for a while, and it's always about time or consistency. And really my best advice would be is that I would not hold yourself to any sort of like schedule or anything. I think by allowing yourself, again, that liberty to feel that you can do things like delete old videos or hide them or whatever, and really not limit yourself to like thinking that your videos have to last for posterity or like be pumping out consistent content. I think the thing is about Booktube is that there are new people every day, so for someone out there, even though you haven't been uploading consistently or like on a schedule or even for a while, there's always going to be someone on the off chance that discovers you one day without even you knowing it and then loving your channel, because that's often what's happened to me. Like, not about me, but like me watching other people's videos. So in terms of watching content on Booktube, for me, now straying away from what I feel about my own content, I actually like am the complete opposite of everything I just said about like uniform, succinct videos. I love watching any Booktube video. I love watching really long ones, personally speaking. I love the feeling of someone being so enthusiastic about something that it leads them to talk for a lengthy amount of time on it, because I feel like as readers we become these sort of pseudo experts on the book, even though of course whatever you say about a book on this platform, you don't owe anyone anything. You don't have to be implying that you're the authority on the book. So in any instance where someone says, hey, you read this wrong or you didn't read this correctly, I think Booktube is a very enlightening space, especially for those people that use this platform as like this format of, again, feeling so enthusiastic about something that you feel compelled to share it with other people online. And with all of that being said, it's really funny because I think what's led me, again, back to like time and consistency, I think what's always gravitated me to stay on Booktube and make videos is because I love the idea of someone I watch regularly might end up reading something I've read, so we've both read a book, or of course like me getting recommendations from them, or me feeling like I can mimic that enthusiasm that they loved about a book that I hope becomes the same for me. And all of that really leads me to say that I truly see myself more as a Booktube watcher than a Booktube creator. And I think by positioning myself there, mainly because before I started Booktube, like making videos, I'd been watching Booktube already for a couple of years or so, so I've always felt more comfortable there, like in the distance watching, or in the backdrop. And I think because it's much more likely for me to always be watching Booktube like years from now versus me always making videos, and that's how I always see myself now. It's just me making videos is like the extra part that I really enjoy but never hold myself like fully responsible for, or like I never like put pressure on myself, and that's why I sort of go with the flow with what I choose to put on here. And so this leads me to talking about you know, years from now or 6 months or whatever, from now with my own channel kind of where I see myself and what I'd like to do. And there are really only a couple things I could think of, but one of them, to sort of go back to like that more chatty or casual style of videos, is that I'd like to track my actual progress, or a way for me to like mimic my actual reading better through my videos. Something as easy as maybe doing more Friday reads more regularly, where I check in more, and I can really sort of track my own reading progress better about my specific thoughts at that time. Because usually right now I've always had the preference of thinking about everything I've thought about a book only once I've finished it. And really the only other thing is that I would like my videos in the future to be more intro friendly. So I feel like mainly I think about my audience on Booktube as fellow readers that have already watched me for a while, but I would really like to make more videos that are maybe more like list made, maybe like here's 5 classics in case you've never read classics before, things like that, because I think back to who I was years ago before Booktube, when I walked into a bookstore and I would be intimidated and I'd have no idea what to read, beyond, asking a bookseller or something. But there's nothing to me more powerful than having the information to make your own decisions about what you want to read, and I want to help people do that too. Alright, and now my favorite part, moving on to the shoutouts. So I have sort of 3 sections here, so I'll start with this first section, and I'm calling this the Booktube Starter Pack. So these are booktubers I feel personally would be great introductions for you if you're unfortunate enough to like find me as like your beginning Booktube era or like your experience. Please watch these channels instead, because I think they would be great introductions for you to really feel what Booktube is all about. And to me, Booktube is all about a feeling of community and really having, the power to like figure out who you like watching and why. Obviously, there's more beyond this list, but these are people I just thought of immediately. So if you're new to Booktube, please do yourself a favor and go out and find Steve Donahue, Jason at Old Blues Chapter and Verse, Kelly at Books I'm Not Reading, Jen, I think, right? I think Jen is her name, at Remembered Reads, Sarah at Hardcover Hearts, Brian at Bookish, Claudia at Spinster's Library, Katie at Books and Things, and then finally, for me, it was Ashley at Climb the Stacks. Way back whenever I watched videos, she's the reason why I'm basically here. So please go find all those booktubers. I'll link everyone down below, obviously, as my Booktube starter pack. And so my next section of shoutouts are dedicated to what I'm calling the book club banter group. And obviously these aren't people that are book clubby, but these are wonderful people I would love to be in a book club with. I think it would be incredible, all of us in a room. But these are people that I think are generally very accessible, very inviting to watch and also learn from, and I think they're great. Great sort of chatty, I could just listen to them, you know what I mean. I have here for this group Doris at All D Books, Tom at Tom Reads Things, David Murphy, Greg at Supposedly Fun, Juan at Just Juan Reader, Lukash at Totally Pretentious, Laura at Laura Fry, and Rick at Another Kick at Can Lit. So for my third section here, I have Would Read and Would Review. So this next section of people, they're not writers, or at least not all of them, but they're people who I really respect and really look forward to, or I've really learned a lot from their reviews. So if you've been watching me, you'll know that reviews are something I really love about Booktube and something I really prioritize, in at least with my own content. So these are people I really look up to, or I think they're incredible. I think the way they talk about books is enlightening and so resourceful and amazing. And for the would read part, these are just people that if they ever wrote a review about a book somewhere online outside of Booktube, you can guarantee that I would read it, because I think how this group talks about books is incredible. So I'm gonna list them, and please go watch them. Again, obviously I have Ashley at Climb the Stacks, obviously Claire at Claire Reads Books, who I never shut up about, Dan at Weird Weird Book Club, Matthew Sharapa, Matt at MCS Books, Jen at Insert Literary Pun Here, and Wilson Shugart. And finally, I have one last category for shoutouts, and I'm calling this Who to Watch, or like, you know, who should be on your radar. And really, booktubers that I feel like are going to do great things in years to come. I'm really looking forward to how they're going to develop in years. James at The Serial Reader, Kathy Grimm at Grimm Reads, Jenny at Bookish Shenanigans, Juan at Bookish Islander, and finally Brian at Book Wanting. I'm only just noticing, I think I'm like getting towards the 20-minute mark here, so I'm so sorry for how long this was, but yeah, that's my video about being on Booktube for 2 years and hopefully many more years to come. If you have a Booktube channel, obviously if you're new, please introduce yourself. I am always for, you know, Booktube newbies and like really helping them, you know, find a community on here. It's really the best part about Booktube. As always, and I say it in every video, but thanks for watching. I really do mean it. It goes without saying that obviously the reason I think people are on Booktube, or at least a factor for being on here for so long, is the community that interacts with you. And really, thanks so much for all the kind comments that everyone leaves every time. I really appreciate every single one of them. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.